As it happens, there is a plethora of local and rural regions from around the world that have their own tales of legendary or extinct animals. Animals whose present existence is disputed or unsubstantiated. They usually come complete with oral accounts, ancestral anecdotes, and rich traditions of folklore. From Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, to the Chupacabra. These creatures fall into the realm of cryptozoology. A mix of folklore and cultural traditions, but rarely do they come complete with empirical evidence, the cornerstone of the scientific process. Without overwhelming empirical evidence, some consider cryptozoology to be a pseudoscience in its entirety. And of course, others consider it valid science. However, it is defined as the study of animals whose existence has not yet been proven. Amongst this mysterious mix of cryptids, exists the Kting Voar. A Southeast Asian creature, that unlike many of its counterparts, carries with it the burden of evidence and vigorous scientific debate, about the very nature of its existence. What sets this cryptid apart from its far greater known fellow cryptids, is that the Kting Voar's existence, actually has some credible science behind it. Journals and articles in scientific magazines, have been written about the Kting Voar, as recently as the early 2000s. Namely, scientific publications such as Nature and Journal of Zoology. And so the Kting Voar has among its believers, actual scientists, biologists and zoologists. A wildlife researcher, and one of the writers of the official entry on the Kting Voar, published by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, Hunter Weiler, said, "This is the only documented mammal that we know exists but that has never been seen by outsiders." Weiler, however, was not free from opposition. Skeptics vigorously refuted the Kting Voar's existence as mere legend, comparing it to the chimera, or more akin to a Loch Ness Monster, of Southeast Asia. In fact, Richard A. Melville, a retired trustee at Johns Hopkins University, who studied and wrote about the animals of Cambodia, left no room for misconceptions when it came to his statements on the topic. But if we are to truly gain a greater understanding of this phenomena, in an attempt to discover the truth, we must go back to the beginning. At the dawn of the 20th century, big game hunting had exploded in popularity, and spread throughout the known world. The region of Vietnam and Cambodia was no exception. During a big game hunting expedition in 1929, hunters traveling in the region, killed a pair of Kting Voars, assuming they were nothing more significant than tiger bait. Subsequently, the hunters donated the animal horns to the University of Kansas, upon their return. There, they would be miscategorized as horns belonging to the copri, a species of wild cattle, endemic to Cambodia. Nothing more than whispers about the Kting Voar would even exist, until almost 7 decades later. During the 1990s, a startling array of new and rediscovered species were revealed in Indochina. The most contested of these is the Pseudonovibos spiralis. This remarkable antelope-horned, long-limbed bovine beast had remained entirely unknown to science until its discovery. The first significant discovery was made in Vietnam, in early 1994. German zoologist, Dr. Peter Wolfgang, spotted a strange pair of horns that were unlike any that he had seen before. They were approximately 18 inches long, heavily spiraled, blackish in color, and their upper portions were greatly splayed. Upon analysis of his photographic evidence, neither Dr. Wolfgang himself, nor his colleagues back home in Germany, and elsewhere around the world, were able to assign these mystifying horns to any known species. During this same time, Norway-based zoologist, Dr. Maurizio Dioli, was visiting northeastern Cambodia's provinces, when he purchased 2 pairs of unusual spiral horns at a market. Each pair was attached to a portion of skull, and seemed to resemble the horns of a juvenile female copri. Upon closer observation, however, Dioli found that the skull's sutures were completely fused, conclusive proof that the animals had been adults, not juveniles. These horns bore very pronounced rings, were almost perfectly circular in cross-section, and were more widely splayed. Clearly then, these were not from a copri. Nor did they match those from either of the other 2 species of wild cattle known in Cambodia. Indeed, they did not correspond with the horns of any animal documented by science. For many years, tales have emerged from Cambodia's hidden mountain ranges of this strange animal, known as the Kting Voar. Normally described as a cow-like animal, with peculiar twisting horns about 45 centimeters, or 20 inches long, and spotted fur, also known to eat snakes. Locals alleged that when the Kting Voar devours snakes, these reptiles bite its horns, creating their rings, and infusing them with venom. This supposedly bestows the horns with medicinal properties against snake bites. Consequently, immediately after a Kting Voar is killed by a hunter, its horns are removed and used for making the venom antidote. This is prepared by burning the horns in a fire, hence, very few survive to be sold at the markets as trophies. Around the same time, Dr. Dioli learnt of Dr. Wolfgang's investigations. He recognized that the horns of their Vietnamese holy goat matched those of his Cambodian Kting Voar. These 2 mysterious mammals were one and the same, both belonged to the newly named species, Pseudonavibos spiralis. Moreover, Dr. Dioli revealed that 2 horns, supposedly from a young female copri, that were collected in southern Vietnam as long ago as 1929, and donated to the Kansas Museum of Natural History, are actually those of Pseudonavibos spiralis. Even more tantalizing are reports from early January 1995, documenting the capture of a still unidentified mystery mammal in central Vietnam during December 1994. Considered an adolescent female specimen, it was caught alive in a village near central Vietnam. It was referred to by its captors as a tower. It died shortly afterwards, and was eaten before its body could be scientifically examined. It resembled a goat, with a roundish head and long ears, horns, a stout body, and a black and white coat, patterned with buff and grey patches. Nothing more has been heard about the tower. Could this cryptic creature be one and the same as Pseudonavibos? If so, it is quite ironic and tragic that the only complete and living specimen to come within reach of modern-day science only went as far as the local cooking pot. In January 2001, a team of French biologists published a pair of startling, highly controversial papers, in which they claimed that Pseudonavibos is non-existent, a forgery. The results of the DNA study revealed that the markers from the Pseudonavibos material were a perfect match with those from the Vietnamese domestic cattle, and had been skillfully manipulated by heat treatment, followed by twisting and trimming, to create the distinctive spiral and heavily ridged characteristics of the horns. Although there can be little doubt that these particular specimens are indeed fakes, there is currently no evidence that any of the several other sets of horns on record are also fraudulent. Kansas University mammologist, Professor Robert M. Tim, published an extensive paper on Pseudonavibos, in which he documented 2 sets of trophy horns, procured by 2 Western big game hunters in Vietnam in 1929, that were indeed the exception. He also added that the creature is indeed valid, having uncovered various overlooked records from the 1880s and 1950s, that documented a mysterious, spiral-horned bovine beast. In a separate paper, a team of Eastern European scientists announced that their analysis of this enigmatic creature indicate that the Kting Voar is a valid species, belonging to the buffalo subtribe, Bovina. Can the riddle of the Kting Voar's existence ever be answered? Is the enigmatic beast indeed a real and extremely rare species, critically endangered, or even extinct? So rare in fact, that procurement of its much prized snake-repelling horns, even by locals, is extremely difficult. And that has in turn led to the deliberate preparation of copies for use in rituals. In other words, some of the preserved horns on record are indeed fakes, yet were created, not to fool, but merely to act as substitutes for the real thing. It seems, however, that the Kting Voar remains suspended in a decidedly controversial scientific limbo, and seems destined to remain there indefinitely, or at least until further evidence for its existence is discovered. That concludes today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like, share and subscribe to this channel, and please consider sharing my videos on other platforms, and supporting me on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.